There's some actors whose passing feels like the end of an era, not because they were the biggest movie stars in the world or because they dominated every award ceremony, but because they quietly became part of our lives. They appeared on our television screens, in our cinemas, and eventually in our memories, often without us even realizing just how much they meant to us. Today, unfortunately, cinema has lost one of its true gentlemen, Sir Sam Neill. For many people, it'll always be Dr. Alan Grant, the reluctant paleontologist who taught us that dinosaurs could once again walk the earth. Others will remember him as Merlin, Cardinal Wolsey, or the other countless characters he brought to life in nearly 50 years in front of the camera. But for horror fans, for us, Sam Neill was something different. He wasn't just an actor in horror films, he became one of the genre's greatest storytellers, one of the finest portrayals of fear, madness, and human vulnerability that we've ever seen. And not many people know this, but born Nigel John Dermot Neill in Northern Ireland in 1947, his family emigrated to New Zealand while he was still a young boy. It was there the foundations of an extraordinary career began to take shape. Now, unlike so many other actors who dreamed of Hollywood fame, Sam never seemed interested in becoming a celebrity. He wasn't chasing magazine covers or blockbuster paychecks. He simply wanted to tell interesting stories, and that philosophy followed him throughout his entire career. His breakthrough came in the New Zealand film Sleeping Dogs in 1977, before international audiences discovered him through My Brilliant Career opposite Judy Davis. Critics immediately recognised something special. He possessed a rare quality. He could play intelligent without arrogance, kindness without weakness, authority without intimidation, and even in his early performances, there was something thoughtful in his eyes. It always felt like his characters were carrying secrets that hadn't yet been shared. And perhaps that's why he became so perfect for horror, because nobody unravelled quite like Sam Neill. Sam's first major venture into horror arrived in 1981 with The Omen 3, The Final Conflict. Taking over the role from Damien Thorn couldn't have been easy. Gregory Peck had already battled the Antichrist in part 1, and audience knew exactly what to expect after part 2. But Sam didn't play Damien as a pantomime villain. He wasn't loud, he wasn't theatrical, he was calm, collected, and almost charming. That restraint somehow made him even more frightening. Evil wasn't shouting, evil wasn't smiling politely when the world quietly fell apart around them. The very same year, he delivered what many critics now consider one of his greatest performances of his career in Possession. Now, if you haven't seen Possession, prepare yourself. It's not a horror film you simply watch, it's probably one you kind of survive. The emotional intensity between Sam Neill and Isabella Gianni is unlike anything else in cinema. Every scene feels raw, painful, and unpredictable, as if both actors were willing to leave pieces of themselves behind for the audience. It's messy, heartbreaking, and terrifying, and somehow kind of beautiful all at once. Even today, over 40 years later, Possession continues to inspire filmmakers and horrify first time viewers in equal measure. Then came Dead Calm. Technically, it's more of a psychological thriller than an outright horror, but anyone who's watched it knows just how nerve wracking it becomes. Confined almost entirely to a yacht in the middle of the ocean alongside Nicole Kidman and Billy Zane, Sam once again showed that the true fear doesn't always need monsters. Sometimes isolation is enough, and sometimes grief is even more, and sometimes, as we know, a human being is the scariest thing imaginable. But if there's one performance that truly cemented Sam Neill as a horror icon, it came in 1994 when he teamed up with horror legend director John Carpenter for In the Mouth of Madness. Now, if you've never seen this film, stop what you're doing after this video and go and watch it. Seriously, I'll wait because this is cosmic horror at its absolute finest. Neil plays insurance investigator John Trent, who prides himself on logic and reason, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, reality begins slipping away. The line between fiction and truth disappear, and before long, both the character and the audiences are questioning everything they're seeing. Watching Sam Neill descend into complete psychological collapse is mesmerizing. Every stage feels believable, and every expression tells another part of the story. By the final act, the laughter has become every bit as disturbing as any monster Carpenter could have created. For me, it's one of the greatest horror performances ever committed to film. 3 years later came Event Horizon, a film that wasn't fully appreciated when it was released, but since become one of the defining cult horror classics of the 1990s. Depends who you ask, but as Dr. William Weir, Sam begins as a grieving scientist haunted by personal tragedy. Slowly, that grief becomes obsession, then corruption, and if you've seen the film, something far, far worse. His transformation throughout the film is extraordinary because it never feels forced. It doesn't suddenly become evil, it becomes consumed, it's subtle and it's tragic, and by the end, it's quite generally terrifying. Of course, no conversation about Sam Neill would ever be complete without talking about Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg's masterpiece that did change cinema forever. The dinosaurs were revolutionary, the visual effects were groundbreaking, and John Williams delivered another amazing score. But none of that would have worked if the audiences hadn't believed that people standing beside those dinosaurs. And that's where Sam came in. Dr. Alan Grant wasn't a superhero, he wasn't an action hero, he was just a scientist completely out of his depth. His fear became our fear. His wonder became our wonder. And by the end of the film, after everything he'd endured, his relationship with the children had changed him forever. It's one of the most beautifully understated character arcs in blockbuster history, and Sam played every single moment with warmth, honesty, and humanity. He made us believe. The remarkable thing about Sam Neill's career is just how varied it was. He effortlessly moved between horror, comedy, historical drama, independent cinema, and major Hollywood productions. One moment he'd be battling supernatural evil, the next he'll be making us laughing for Ragnarok, hilariously playing an actor portraying Odin. His appearance in The Hunt for Red October, The Piano, The Tudors, Peaky Blinders, Hunt for the Wilder People, Peter Rabbit, and a dozen more other productions, there was never any sense that he was chasing fame. He simply loved acting, and audiences loved watching him. Off screen, Sam was refreshingly normal. He adored New Zealand, he loved his vineyard, he regularly shared videos from his farm, chatting to ducks, pigs, and sheep with exactly the same warmth he'd shown audiences for decades. While so many other celebrities carefully craft public personas, Sam simply seemed content enjoying his life. And there's something wonderful, reassuring about that. In 2023, Sam revealed he'd been diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer. Instead of hiding away, he faced it with remarkable honesty, openness, and humour. He spoke candidly about his treatment, his fears, and his gratitude for the life that he'd lived. Earlier this year, he delighted fans by sharing that he's once cancer free following pioneering treatment, which makes today's news feel all the more shocking. His family confirmed that Sam Neill passed away suddenly at the age of 78, while also making it clear that he remained cancer free at the time of his death. It's difficult to process, and sometimes we convince ourselves that the people we've watched on the screen for decades will sometimes, well, will always be here. But life is always a reminder just how precious time really is. For horror fans especially, Sam Neill leaves behind an extraordinary legacy. He understood something that many actors never quite grasped. Fear isn't about screaming. Okay, maybe that bit, but it's about believing. His performances work because he never acted frightened. He just made us feel frightened with him, whether confronting Satan, ancient cosmic horrors, haunted spaceships, or the collapse of reality itself. Sam Neill always brought honesty to every performance, and that's why they continue to resonate today. So today isn't simply about mourning an actor, it's about celebrating the career that quietly touched millions of people across the world. Where you first met him surrounded by dinosaurs, lost your mind alongside him in the mouth of madness, or travelled to hell and back aboard the Rent Horizon, you will remember him. But not just because he was talented, because every performance felt genuine. Cinema does feel a bit quieter today, and the horror community has lost one of its finest ambassadors. And audiences everywhere have lost one of the kindest, most dependable faces ever to grace the screen. Thank you, Sam, for every adventure, and thank you for every nightmare. And thank you for reminding us that the greatest performances aren't always the loudest, they're the ones that stay with us long after the credits roll. I'll leave you with this amazing 2-minute video from an interview where he's asked the best lesson he learnt from his parents. I do hope that he's been reunited with them once more. Rest in peace, Sir Sam Neill. And if you're lucky, if you're very lucky, I will see you all in the next video.
What is the best lesson you learnt from your parents?
Oh, wow, that's a really interesting question. That's a really, really interesting question. I think there were... I don't know why that question has moved me so much, but it has. My parents were of the generation that went through a lot of things. They went through the Depression. My mother lost her father in the First War, so she grew up without her father. Yeah, so they went through a lot of stuff. But they were very stoic people. And I'd had a year at the university where I'd done bugger all. I was acting in plays, and and trying to find a girlfriend and, you know, things like that. So it came to exam time, and I realised I'd done almost no work. It got me very anxious. Anyway, I got home, and Mum said, "How are you, darling?" And I said, "Oh, Mum, I think I'm having a breakdown, and I've got exams in a couple of weeks, and I don't know how I'm going to go." And she just looked at me and she said, "Well, you're just going to have to pull yourself together, aren't you?" And I think that was the best lesson I learned from her, is sometimes you just have to pull yourself together. It's a tough lesson, but it's a good one. But thanks for that question. That was